Careers. It's a word that everyone in this room will have heard a lot, and some will have thought about a lot, strategized a lot, maybe even dreamt about. But what is the truth around career progression? Today I'm going to tell you 3 stories, true stories, about 3 different people at different stages in their career, from different cultures, and from different sectors, different backgrounds, different skills and experience. But throughout the 3 stories, I want you to be cognizant of a theme or a silver thread that runs through it. But before I do that, I'm just going to make 2 quick assumptions. My first assumption is that if you're here listening to this talk on careers today, that you yourself are interested in progressing your own career, and that actually you're open to hearing new ideas or tactics. And the second is that you don't have a secret trust fund that's going to take care of you financially. Are they fair assumptions? Excellent. So firstly, the first person we're going to meet today is Robert. Robert's a 22-year-old from Northern England who's finished his law degree but decided he doesn't want to go into law anymore. Just doesn't feel like the right fit for him. What he wants to do is move into human resources. The problem that Robert has is he doesn't have any experience. He's only got his academic background. So he sends CV after CV after CV and is told the same thing over and over again. I'm very sorry, but we need someone with experience. And then one day he got an invitation for a job interview to go to big fancy offices on Tottenham Court Road near Oxford Street, the heart of central London, which for a northerner who had never been to London before felt like a huge opportunity. The job, a 6-week temporary HR administration contract for a semi-well-established NGO or non-governmental organization, was not anything that most people would get excited about. But to Robert, it was a huge opportunity. So he got ready, got in his new suit, and off he went to Tottenham Court Road. And then he got there half an hour before the interview, like you should. Check the people, check the culture. Is everyone happy? Is everyone miserable? You can learn a lot about an organization just by reading the room. And he did that and all seemed fine. And then the receptionist came to get him and said, "Oh, actually, Robert, just one thing. Before you go into your interview, we just want you to come into this room here. We've got a very short, simple test for you that we'd like you to do." No problem. So he went in and looked on the screen, and his heart sank. In front of him was an extremely simple VLOOKUP Microsoft Excel exercise. VLOOKUP, vertical lookup, a very simple manipulation tool. Very, very simple if you know how to do it. Now, in this context, Robert didn't have access to the internet. He couldn't look anything up, and he had to sit in this room for 10 minutes staring at a blank screen, knowing he was no longer going to get this opportunity. He was a bit sad about this, but he was there and thought, I'll go through the interview. So he moved from being sat in silence and went through to the interview room. And he met 45-year-old Sharon, HR manager, and 58-year-old accountant Margaret. And they had a wonderful chat for about 45 minutes. And at the end of the interview, he got asked the question that you will all get asked at the end of an interview. So, Robert, nice to meet you. Have you got any questions for us? And Robert said, I don't actually have a question. Sort of a question, but it's a bit more of a request. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation, and it would mean the world to me to get this opportunity, and I actually think that I could offer a lot of value. But when I leave this room, you're going to go next door and see that I got 0 on your data test. And now I know this means that I can't have the job, but I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I don't want to let you down. Can I come back tomorrow and do it? I'll go home tonight and I'll look up what a VLOOKUP is, and I will do it, and I come back and I promise you I will get 100%. And would you let me do that? Sharon and Margaret looked at each other, slightly perplexed, and went, sure, yeah, go on then, thinking they'd never see Robert again. Robert went home that night, went online, looked it up. 20 seconds later, he knew exactly what the buttons were in Excel that he needed to press. Went back the next day. The whole test took him about 20 seconds, and off he went. 10 minutes later, he got a phone call from Sharon. We'd be delighted to offer you the job. We've never seen anybody, especially with the greatest of respect at your level, show such commitment and wanting to actually go the extra mile to do something, and we think we'd be lucky to have you. Now, Robert then went from strength to strength. That short temporary contract turned into something else. Within 2 months, they made it permanent. Within 4 months, he had his first promotion. And within 9 months, he had his first assistant. And I would argue that if in that moment of difficulty, in that step of career progression, rather than running away from the interview, or rather than being emotional about it, he focused on what he wanted Sharon and Margaret to think of him. He wanted to build the relationship, and he didn't want to let them down. He tried something a little bit different. And ultimately, he was authentic and willing to go the extra mile. And I want you to remember those points as we meet the next two people of my story. So we'll leave Robert for now, happy in his HR world in London. And now I want to introduce you to Fatima. Fatima is very different to Robert. 45 years old, Lebanese expatriate living in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. Fatima's had a very, very successful career, a very niche career, working in sovereign wealth management in financial services. Salary anywhere in the region of around 500,000 to 600,000 per annum. She's very successful. But another key learning around careers, for any of you that are thinking of moving internationally, it is not just about who has the shiniest website or the shiniest Instagram page or the most followers or have done a particular drive. A key thing of learning about when you're assessing organizations and where they're in different countries is employment law. Fatima is an expatriate in Dubai. When there is a change of management and she has an argument or a disagreement with her new boss, and she gets a letter the next day that says, "Dear Miss Fatima, your contract is terminated in 6 weeks." She has no recourse. She has no ability to challenge it. She can't do anything about it. All Fatima knows now is that unless she finds a similar role in 6 weeks, she has to return to Lebanon, a country she's not been in for 15 years, with no family there, that's in the middle of a civil war, and is going through an economic collapse. That's quite a life change. So Fatima knew time was of the essence, and she did what all good professional people do. She looked into her network, and she took some advice, got a coach and a mentor, started looking at building new networks. 3 weeks into the process, she's online, and the dream job emerges in front of her. But what's quite important about this, in this niche world, is that Fatima knew that it wasn't just the dream job for her, but she was the dream job for them, the dream person for that job. So she knew all she had to do was submit her CV. In that moment, she got some counsel that said, things are not always linear when you're applying for things. Don't just submit your CV. Why don't you make yourself visible? Try something a little bit different. Utilize LinkedIn, which is a fantastic professional social network platform, and see if you can make some contact with some people, make sure everyone knows you exist. Why not try and look at different options? She didn't really want to do it. She didn't need to do it. She was the perfect person for the perfect job. She sends the CV and the system works, right? On the Tuesday, she submitted her CV. on the Wednesday morning, by the time she'd woken up, she got an email through. Dear Miss Fatima, thank you very much for your CV. We are no longer going to progress your application, but we wish you all the best for the future. Kind regards, Human Resources. 2.5 weeks left before deportation. There's no other opportunities available. She was upset and emotional and thinking about, to be honest, what was she going to do with all of her cats and her life and how everything was going to change. The next day, she got a message on LinkedIn from one of the people that she connected with, who was the senior hiring director for that position. Dear Fatima, thank you very much for reaching out. You've got a really interesting profile. I'd love to have a chat with you sometime. Fatima was furious. She thought, how dare this man, who has just rejected me from this position and having this impact on my life, now is sending me some pleasantry without really thinking about it. I'm offended and I'm insulted. Before replying and responding, she sought some counsel. And the counsel said to us, another really important lesson about career progression is whether you're working in a startup, a medium-sized business, a social enterprise, or, in this instance, one of the largest sovereign wealth financial institutions in the world, there's a very good chance that the internal dynamics of the organization do not work as seamlessly as you might think they do from the outside looking in. The left hand often does not talk to the right hand. Let's just assume for a minute that this very senior director has absolutely no idea you've even applied. He could completely oblivious to it. Let's be authentic, let's try and build a relationship, and let's be constructive. So she wrote him a message and said, Dear Mr., we'll call him Mr. X. Dear Mr. X, thank you so much for your message. In all honesty, I was actually really hoping to get to know you a bit better. But unfortunately, I applied for this position and was rejected yesterday. But if there's ever another opportunity for us to talk, or anything else comes up, it would be great to get to know you a bit more. 2.5 minutes it took him to reply. Can you talk? Okay. Mr. X then rang Fatima, and they spent 15 minutes on the phone. Fatima didn't say much. All Mr. X did was apologize. Now, I'll just be clear here. He's a very senior director of a very large financial institution. He was not apologizing for anything that he had done. What he was doing was apologizing for his useless and rubbish HR department. They should never treat you in this way. I don't understand their processes. They don't know what they're doing. Nobody of your standing should have been rejected. Will you come and meet with my business partner on Monday? We would love to speak with you about this opportunity. She said, okay. She went on Monday, and on Tuesday, a contract offer came through. Now, the other interesting element of that story is that between that phone call and the Tuesday, the psychological dynamic of that career change switched. And Fatima knew by that point that she was being pulled into the organization. So not only did she get the contract offer, she renegotiated it by around 20% and managed to get a car park space, which if you're in the heart of Dubai in the UAE is very important. And she was no longer going to Lebanon. So when you think of Fatima, what I want you to remember is, if she had not been authentic and she'd not tried to stand out and tried to find a way to build relationships, she would have been deported and she would be back in Lebanon right now rather than where she is in Dubai. Takes me to my final story, which is to meet Sadiq. Sadiq, again, a different background, an Egyptian national who is ex-military and worked for many years across the Middle East and APAC, doing a variety of director roles in a number of sectors. There's another thing that happens when you're progressing your career. There's this thing that pops up from time to time called life. Life happened to Sadiq. Life fell in love with a new lady who lived in Thailand. He didn't want to live in the Middle East anymore. As far as he was concerned, his new vision was now going to be Project Thailand. The problem, however, with this is that many, many countries like Thailand always prioritize and often only recruit nationals from within that country. They're not very good at hiring expatriates. It might not be part of their strategic vision. So for 6 months, Sadiq constantly tried to apply for roles and get noticed. Rejection after rejection after rejection. Now, Albert Einstein allegedly once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So Sadiq thought, well, my mission hasn't changed, but I need to change what I'm doing. So he thought, what I'm going to do, rather than applying for the jobs, I've built up quite a good network now online. I'm going to try and build those relationships, and I'll see if I can help them in some way. So a few weeks into this thought process, an opportunity came up. And Sadiq wrote to the HR department and said, I know that I won't be eligible for this position, but I was wondering, would you mind if I shared it online for you? Because I've got quite a large network now, and it could be useful. I said, yeah, sure, it's fine, no problem. So he did. And he wrote a nice post to my lovely network over in Thailand. I've had some recent dealings with this business, and they seem a great organization. And if you're interested, I would highly recommend. His post went absolutely viral. He got 13 likes. But the interesting thing about those likes was one of them was the global chief people officer based over in LA. And he thought, well, that's interesting. That's a bit different. I'll connect with that person, see what happens. He forgot about it then, didn't do any more. 2 weeks later, he got a message from the global chief people officer. Hello, Sadiq. I've been hearing recently that you've expressed quite a large amount of interest in our business and even shared one of the recent jobs that we advertised. As you know, we often look for recruiting Thai nationals. We've been looking quite extensively for someone with the right skills and experience from Thailand, and we've decided that there is nobody. Would you be interested? Yes, was the answer from Sadiq. She said, great, we'll fly you over, you can meet the team, and we can see if we can take it from there. So off Sadiq went, and glad to confirm he was offered the position. And again, knew by that point he was being pulled into the organization, which was very helpful when it comes to the negotiations as well. Now, as we leave Sadiq, I told you at the beginning of today I was going to talk to you about the truth around career progression. And one thing that each of these individuals from all different backgrounds has in common is that they all tried to do something different. They all tried to prioritize relationships, and they all tried to stand out in an authentic way. There are many, many different schools of advice around what the best way to progress your career is. Some people will say it's about who you know, or who you knew as you were growing up. And some people will say it's about what skills you've got, or what academic qualifications that you've got. And some people will say it's about being in the right time in the right place. One thing that I would like you to take away from hearing those three stories is that for me, it's all about being authentic, putting yourself out there, trying something different, and being resilient. Now, Simon Sinek once said, you don't always have to follow the same process as everyone else. There's not just one way of doing things. You don't have to just go and get a grad scheme because everyone else is doing it. You can do it your own way. The only rule is you can't impact anybody negatively whilst doing it. So you should always look for ways to try and be innovative and be creative. Now, to sum up those three stories, each of those three people had a key moment that could have completely derailed their career, but they all focused on those relationships. And now, I'm pleased to say that Richard went on to be the youngest HR director in the UK's public sector before working internationally. Fatima actually managed to set up a charitable fund that's raised millions of dollars for people back in Lebanon. And Sadiq actually only moved to Thailand in October. But he did say he's going to watch the recording of this, so I just wanted to say hi to Sadiq, and I'm sure you're having a lovely time. None of those three life scenarios would have taken place if in that moment those individuals from different worlds had not focused on being authentic, resilient, and above all else, prioritizing the relationships. Thank you.